This is 5 Minute Feng Shui podcast episode 163, Feng Shui FAQs and 2022. Welcome to the 5 Minute Feng Shui podcast, where each week I talk about how to move energy and make money. You'll learn how to create a prosperous home and an abundant life using classical Chinese Feng Shui. I'm your host, Katie Weber, publisher of the Red Lotus Letter, Feng Shui Easing for Wealth. Each week, I'll cover Feng Shui topics that can help you improve your life, share inspiring stories, and always end with 3 easy-to-implement Feng Shui tips that you can put to work right away, and usually in about 5 minutes. Now let's get started on the 5 minutes that could change your life. Hello there, my Feng Shui friend. I hope you are doing well as we enter, what is it? Almost the 3rd week of this crazy Omicron pandemic wave that we're going through. Had a little scare of my own recently. My mom came down with COVID and tested positive. Fortunately, with her vaccinations and booster shot and all that kind of stuff, she has not had a major problem. She's just been a little bit tired, a little fatigued, sniffles and that kind of thing. So that's been just a great blessing. And my concern was we were in a car together all one day before we found out that she was positive for COVID and ended up not feeling well, but I think it was just a big allergy that we have here in Texas called cedar, mountain cedar. And anyhow, it just made everybody in the house feel crummy. And with, COVID going around, we thought, well, we might ought to get a test. So we got a test and thankfully found out just before I started talking to you that it's all negative. So that's great. And my mom's on the mend. And I hope COVID has not been a problem for you or your family. And it's one of those things that I think we're going to have to just get used to and learn to live with. But one of the things that I hope you enjoy living with is this 5 Minute Feng Shui podcast, because it's a lot of fun for me to do. And I wanted to share a notice that I got on an iTunes review, and I want to share it with you. It says, I look forward to each week's episode. 5 Minute Feng Shui is one of my favorite podcasts. I discovered it while knee-deep in a huge fixer-upper project that left my family trying to keep our heads above water for 2 years. Been there. I know how you feel. I applied the Feng Shui techniques and sold the property for much more than I ever expected. In our new house, we applied the strategies from the start, and things are so much better for us now. My next step is getting unstuck as an entrepreneur in the year of the tiger. Thank you so much for 5 Minute Feng Shui. From Michigan, Shannon, via Apple Podcasts. Hey, Michigan Shannon, I think I might know who you are. And if so, I send you a great big hug and a COVID-free kiss. Thank you so much for that review. And if you enjoy listening to 5 Minute Feng Shui, I hope you'll leave a review too. I love to hear from you. This week is sort of what my mom often would call when we were growing up, when she didn't feel like cooking, it was a catch as it's catch can. And this is going to be a catch as it's catch can day. We've had kind of some, ups and downs with COVID testing, and I've been running my folks to Houston for medical appointments and going to my own stuff. And so it's just been sort of a crazy time right now. And we're also getting ready for the Lunar New Year. This is a really potent time. Lots of energy is changing. So if you feel like, things are kind of strange right now, that you're kind of in this weird sort of purgatory, it's neither, you don't really feel a certain energy strongly, or you feel kind of like you're in this kind of weirdness. That's the only, it's like the nether world, I guess, is the way I would. We're not really we have old energies that are packing up and leaving. We've got new energies that are starting to come in and start to gain momentum. So back to this catch as is catch can. I thought today, instead of talking about a particular subject, I talk about a lot of them. And I talk about 2022 because we've got a big year coming up. One of the things that I want to talk about is the Success Pact. And I talk about this because every year when I sit down to write it, I'm looking at what are the energies of the year? What does it look like could be coming? And that's one of the things that is, I think, fascinating about Feng Shui, is to apply the year's energies to the world. I did that 2 years ago when I talked about the epidemic is what I called it. Breathing malady and breathing epidemic. I didn't know the word pandemic. I was expecting flu to be at a crazy all-time high. Who knew that it was going to morph into what it has? And one of the things that I talk about in the forecast is what you can expect in the world. This is, to me, one of the greatest powers of Feng Shui is it can show us what is coming. So today I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about some questions, some FAQs that I get quite a lot. And I thought it'd be a good time to kind of just do a little refresher on some of the questions that I get most often. And I really want to take my hat off and make a nod to my Down Under folks, because I have so many listeners and subscribers and people in my private Facebook group. I love my Down Under folks. They're wonderful. And there's such a great dimension to our group, to my readership. I love talking with folks. And, and sadly, I have never been there. I've never gone to New Zealand. I've never been to Australia. And this is my solemn vow. I am coming. As soon as we can get this damn COVID thing out of the way. I'm sorry, I said a bad word. If we can get that out of the way and get our world open back up, I really would like to go. I also want to go to Ireland too. And these are all places where I've got lots of readers and folks that I just love. So one of the questions we're going to talk about right off the bat is for all the folks down under. And that is your Feng Shui any different because you're under the equator? And the answer is no. It's absolutely the same Feng Shui as it is above the equator. Let me talk a little bit about that. That is, when you look at your house and you do a reading, it doesn't matter whether your house is below the equator or above it, your compass reading is still going to track north, because that's the way we're oriented. It's like saying because I'm down here, then up isn't up and down isn't down anymore. It is. It still is. It doesn't make any difference whether you are above the equator or below it. You're still going to have the same type of energy that you would have on either side of the equator, because we are oriented that way. Our position on the earth would have to be it would have to be like you'd have your own pole. So for instance, if you were to take a reading with a compass, you'd have to have your own pole in the South Pole. It would read north, but because you were below the equator, but because it doesn't, because it actually goes toward the north, then that's our orientation. So that, my friends, is the reason why it's still the same. North is north and south is south, and nothing's going to change that until, well, something changes. Who knows? What have we talked about? I think people have talked about polar reversals and that kind of stuff. Will we see it? I don't know. But in case you've wondered, there's a lot of Feng Shui out there that's very different, shall we say. There's a lot of different interpretations. And you know what? If you find somebody who tells you differently and you get great results out of that type of Feng Shui that they practice, then you should follow them. I really feel that because of the magnetic location, and the same is true for you. Think about in terms of, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Sun still rises in the east, still sets in the west. We are still magnetically polarized to the north. And that's what keeps us up. That's basically, north is up. And that is how we are oriented. Our little blue ball hangs out there in the cosmos, with the north end is up. So to me, that is the reason why it's really the same. You're going to treat it exactly the same way. So nothing else really changes because you're below the equator. I mean, everything, other than the seasons. And the seasons do change, obviously, because of where the sun is hitting. But okay, so hopefully that puts your mind at ease about whether or not it changes based on where you are in your position relative to the equator when it comes to your Feng Shui. Now, another Feng Shui question I get quite a lot is about when I am talking about a room and the way a room is oriented, or a house and its relationship to the door. It absolutely has no relationship. Many people want to know where the door is. Now, let me explain. When we talk about your facing direction, most of the time, most houses are built with, straight front and then the doors in the center of the house, usually, maybe off to the side, maybe a little bit, sometimes completely turned in a different direction altogether. But whatever direction your house is facing, so let's just say the whole front of the house, it is facing, let's say, a street typically. Now, everybody's got different houses, and there's always exceptions to every rule, but by and large, the majority of homes are oriented toward the street and have their door facing that street. That's going to be your facing direction. Now, that's the only time that you're going to orient based on the door. Now, we don't typically in Feng Shui, there is that case where you have the doors north, and that's because it actually is north. You open the door and you're looking north, but we use, in classical Chinese Feng Shui, we use actual directions, whether that's east or southeast or southwest or northwest. Whatever the direction is, that's where we're going to orient the direction of our home. And the same is true when you talk about your entry to a bedroom, an office, a living room. You're not orienting off the door. You're orienting based on the directions of your entire home. So, for instance, the north wall on your house is going to be the north wall in your bedroom. You're going to orient the same directions, the same exact way. So you're not going to be using the door. Now, where the door comes in, you could say, okay, that has a bearing, but it really doesn't. It's really about where are the corners in your room. And they should mirror so basically you take the bagua, however it applies on the footprint of your house, you're going to just shrink that down and orient it the same way. So the north corner, whatever the corner is in your home, however the corners kind of play out, that's going to be the same orientation in every room in your house. I hope that explains things because there's a lot of confusion around the whole door issue. And that's a big kind of point of confusion for a lot of people. So I'm hoping that clears things up. Now let's talk about when you have a different type of direction. So let's talk about personal Feng Shui. Many times people want to use their personal Feng Shui first, and that really is one of the things that we put way at the bottom of the list. I know we all want our own very personal Feng Shui to always be the most important Feng Shui, and I get that. I totally get that, but it isn't. What we deal with in our life, and here's a good example of this. What we deal with in terms of our Feng Shui priorities is we always want to factor in time, because why? Now is now. Now is always happening. And your personal Feng Shui is tied to then, which is when you were born then at whatever day it was and whatever month and year and so on, and whether you're male or female, that then is when you have personal Feng Shui. But right now we have Feng Shui that's impacting our life and affecting our lives right now. So for instance, like right now, you can have your personal Feng Shui all you want, but the pandemic is telling us, well, you can't travel like you want to, or you got to put a mask on, or you need to vaccinate, or you need to isolate, or whatever the case may be. So the time is impacting our life right now more than our space is, or our date of birth, or our personal Feng Shui. So we always want to look at the time element of Feng Shui ahead of our personal Feng Shui. And one of the reasons why is because it's the most potent Feng Shui and most impactful. So for instance, if you have a front door or a bedroom that's in an afflicted sector, that's going to be more important than whether or not it's a good sector for you to be in, or if it's one of your good directions, or the corner of the house is beneficial for you. What's going to be more important is the 5 yellow there. Is the affliction the 2 black there, or the 7 star? Is it going to be, is that what's there in that corner now? That's more important than, again, your personal directions. So these are important concepts to understand, is that time is what is happening now. And that is the same thing that is impacting your feng shui of your home. So from year to year, because you know how it is, 1 year life is great. The next year it's like, what happened? The train, hit me on the tracks. I don't know what happened, but I got run over. And we have to look at what the influence of time is on our life. And that is how it also impacts our front door. So we can have a great month 1 month, and then the next month we have a very strong affliction that hits, and you get a broken leg, or you get COVID, or you lose your job, or your relationship breaks up. So these are all those things that can happen to us, things that are potent, that are impactful in our lives. And so we have to pay close attention to those directions, where our bedroom is and where our front door is, and understand where they are, or the facing direction of our home, so that we understand when the energies are changing from month to month and year to year, what kind of influences that we're under, because those are the most potent ones. All right, so let's talk about if you are an East person in your personal feng shui, and let's say your spouse or partner is a West person, whose directions are you going to favor? That's a very common question I get a lot asked frequently about, and that is a very, very simple answer: whoever makes the most money. Whoever makes the most money gets to decide, because they're paying the check. They're picking up the bill. And I know a lot of times that's the guy, that's the man in the household. And if that's your case, then he gets priority. And think about it, just makes sense, because, whoever's making the money that keeps your world turning around we've got to pay closest attention to them, because that gives you security, right? And but there's a new day. There are many women that make more than their spouses, or maybe they're the owner of the business. The spouse works for them. And in that instance, then the northwest corner, the breadwinner, whoever, if it's a man, then it's going to favor the northwest corner and his directions. And if it's a woman, we're going to favor the woman's personal directions. If the woman makes the most money, then we favor her. And if it's your same gender relationship, doesn't matter. Whoever makes the most money, that's whose directions we're always going to favor. And this is a case where when women make more money, then the breadwinner direction is the southwest sector. And that's the direction that we need to favor as the breadwinner direction. So it's definitely a new day, but it's decidedly old-fashioned when it comes to determining whose directions are favored. It's always going to be whoever makes the most money. So let's talk about facing direction and how important that is. Many times we have, for instance, I had a client last week. We had a 2-hour consultation. She lives on a lake with a beautiful lake house, and it's perched up above the lake, with big wide windows at one end, and so they can see the sunsets and the beautiful lake out in front of them. The front door is literally in the middle, on the side of the house. And when you look at the street view, all you see is the back of the garage entrance. And then there's a little walkway that leads up to the side of the house. So what is the facing direction? Well, for her, in this instance, it's going to be the front of the house that overlooks that beautiful lake scene. Now, this is not typical. This is very atypical. Yet she has a front door. So when the FedEx guy or the mailman comes to knock at the door, they come around to the side of the house, in the middle of the house on the side, and they ring the doorbell. Well, that is the front door. But it's not the facing direction, because it just looks at the wall of a neighbor's house. There's no street that it sees, so the street is at the back of the house. We're not going to use the garage as the facing direction because, well, it just isn't. We are going to use the direction that has the most yang view. Now, this is a very different circumstance. There's not a lot of houses that have doors on the side. And when they do, this is when we have to start looking at the facing direction. And that is maybe they have a big window that faces the street. In that case, whatever that direction is, that's often the facing direction. Or in the case of my client, who had this beautiful lake house. This is also true for people maybe who have mountain homes or beach homes that overlook a beautiful beach, and even condo dwellers. People who live in beautiful condos or high-rise apartments that have those big picture windows that overlook the beauty of the downtown scene and the city lights. That becomes the facing direction, not the door. But this is not a real common thing. We don't see that a whole lot. It's something that is less common and less usual, but it is something to think about. So when you're hiring a Feng Shui consultant, you want to make sure that they understand that facing direction isn't always about the door, which kind of brings us back to that earlier question about how do I orient off the door of the room? No, you don't. So this is a case where we don't orient the house based on the door. However, it does tell us, though, if we do our directions properly, the door will fall in the appropriate sector where it actually is. So, for instance, this woman had a house that was southwest, but the door was in the northwest. And when she took a reading from her front door, it was northwest, and when she took a reading from her facing direction, it was southwest. So one checks on the other. I know that starts getting a little technical. I hope I haven't made anybody twist their head about that. But this is important. Now let's talk about the command position. This is an area where it gets a little gray for some folks, but I want to make it really black and white, very clear. And that is, we always want to face in the command position. And that means where you have a solid wall behind your bed and you can see the door. Now, a solid wall behind your bed that has a door on the same wall is not the command position. So let's talk about that. The command position is very important. It gives you security. It gives you stability. It gives you a feeling of control and that you are in command of your life. And this is really important for everyone. And it doesn't matter whether it's an infant, a crib, a small child's room. It's always important that everyone is sleeping in the command position. Very important. You're at your most vulnerable when you're asleep in your bed, right? And you always want to have that feeling like you're in command and control of your life, even when you're not awake or conscious at the time. So let's talk about that. There are times when I have had clients who have solid walls, but it's on the same wall as the door, or maybe it points there. It has the door is to the side. That's never a good case. Sometimes we do have to choose the wall that has maybe a window on it, and this is not the optimal choice. But when you can be in the command position and that you can see the door ahead of you, that means that you're not going to be overcome by unpleasant surprises. Let's talk for a moment about why we want to be in that command position. Because when you have the door at the side or behind your bed, if you have to be in bed and turn behind you to see who's coming in the door, that means life is going to give you unpleasant surprises that you didn't anticipate. And this is a good way to think of that position when the door is on the same wall or behind you. And that is if you've ever been to the beach when you were a kid, they'd always say, don't turn your back to the ocean. It's because that wave will come up and slap you down and you can get hurt. And it's the same thing when your bed is on the same wall as the door, or the door is behind you, or you have to turn to look back to see the door. That means life is going to creep up behind you and slap you down. And this is something that we don't want you to be surprised by. You don't want to we want to feel like we're in a command role in our life and that we don't have those unpleasant surprises. And this is one of the ways that we manage that. So in order to get your bed in the command position, that you have to have a bed on a wall that has a window, that's okay, because there's ways around that. You can decorate around that. You can make the wall a solid wall of curtains behind it. You can find ways decoratively. And this is a really good Google search for you. And that is just to Google beds with a window on the wall. And you will see examples of how you can decoratively kind of cover it up or maybe camouflage those windows so that if you have a window behind your bed, you can kind of camouflage that. That's what's important. Your heavy curtains will take care of that, and there's lots of great ways that you can handle that. So that's really important that you have that position always whenever you sleep, and it's better to have a bed that's in the command position and maybe with a window behind it than one where the door is behind you and there could be lots of unpleasant things that can happen as a result. Now let's talk about fountain. The idea of having fountains at your house. One of the things that we're missing is generating water in our homes. We have lots of water that leaves our home, that it's draining water, right? Think about that. Showers, bathtubs, sinks, the kitchen sink, the laundry room, the toilets, even toilets. This is a situation where we have water that it may be coming in, but it's draining away. This is a really important aspect when you think about fountains. We always want to have a fountain that has both a generating and a collecting area. And that means those disappearing fountains, we don't want to have that. When we have water running in our house, it's a benefit to us, but then most of our water drains away. Now, I'm not saying that we wouldn't want our water to drain away. It's just that we need to have some water that actually generates and collects. So let's leave that put that off on the shelf for just a moment. It is important that we have showers and that we do have laundry rooms and that we have toilets and that sinks and everything drains away. That's really important that we have good flow. But the other thing, though, that we need is some generating water. Now, you can add generating water with an aquarium. You can do that with a fountain. You can do that with a water feature, maybe that you install in the landscape or in your garden. This is a great way to add water energy to your home that's not running away, because it represents building assets and money and retaining them. That's a wonderful thing that we want to think about when we're thinking about generating money. How also can we retain money? Very important that we do that. Otherwise, then all of our money is just draining away, right? And that's one of the concepts of Feng Shui that's really important when it comes to money. We don't just want to generate, we want to accumulate. And I bang that drum a lot when I talk to people about getting a financial planner, starting some investments, begin a savings program that you don't ever touch. You want to have something that gains and never loses. There's an animal in the Feng Shui pantheon called a Piau. And the Piau is a mythical creature. It's a son of a dragon. And it eats, but it doesn't excrete. The idea is that it eats gold and precious gems, and all it does is accumulates wealth. That's a beautiful concept, right? We want to think of ourselves that way. We always want to think of ourselves as accumulating wealth. Too often we are too busy worried about spending versus accumulating. And it's so important. It's like our bathroom and the water idea, the concept that we need to have generating, which is the taps flow in the sink, in the kitchen, and in the shower. We want our taps to flow, and we also, we want them to drain away, obviously. But we also want to have where we can retain that water. So that would be our fountain, our aquarium, water features that we might install. We also want to have that with money. I want you to think in terms of how can I accumulate money? And one of the things that you accumulate money in the way you accumulate is to never touch it, is to try to create money that it's just nothing but it goes in. And there's something about that energy of always going in, never coming out, that you've got to have one account in your life. And this is important, just one account that the money only goes in, never comes out. And that's That's something that will build and grow, and it creates this momentum of energy and chi of growth in your life. This is so important that we have growth. I was talking with a client of mine, and who's now a longtime friend, longtime reader, love her to pieces. And she's had this area of her garden that's been kind of just naked. It's just bare ground. And she was asking about plants to put in. And should I put in these plants and this plant? This area is just kind of dull, and I just want to landscape it, do something. And my question was, instead of putting in plants, why not plant a lawn? Scratch up that ground, get it kind of, scratch it up and throw out some grass seed. There's some very water stingy plants or very water stingy grass that will grow out there and will create that growth energy. And that's what it was. You can put plants in, but it's still going to be a dead lawn. It's dead, bare dirt. And I want for her in her life to see growth. It's so important that we see green, because this is an area that's been brown for a really long time. And I even told her, if you can't get grass to grow in there, or you don't feel like you can just create a little lawn area and put in fake grass. It looks great. Feng Shui is really big on symbols. We have symbols of horses and dragons. I mean, who's going to have a dragon in their house, right? We're only going to have a symbol of a dragon or a phoenix or a horse. Nobody's going to put a horse in their living room to energize their Feng Shui. So having silk plants or having fake grass, I mean, some of it, like I said, looks really fantastic. And in fact, I have a friend also in my Facebook group, who's also a friend, wonderful woman who's seeing her family in Australia after being gone for 2.5 years. She had this beautiful, very formal backyard, beautiful home, and has this very formal backyard. And she's got a crosshatch kind of patio, and the crosshatch in between the pavers of the patio is this crosshatch of faux grass. But that means that she never has to cut it. She never has to water it. It never overgrows the pavers. And when you look at it, it looks real. It looks fantastic. And this is what's important, though, is it's still beautiful, but it doesn't take any maintenance. And this is what I wanted for my friend today. Is I said, you need to see green growth, and lots of it. It's so important. And in this particular area is where she needed that green growth in her life. This brings up another idea for you, and that is, where can you get green growth in your life? Look in your yard, look in your garden, and see where you can get some growth. That idea and the concept of greenery and growth is so important. So having some kind of a plant, having even just simple old, lucky bamboo is terrific. You can just stick it in water, and it's easy peasy for greenery. Jade plants, they're easy plants. But look around your garden. Look at the areas that are kind of sad, or maybe the grass is worn down or the shrubs have died, and look at that and see where it corresponds to your life, because this is an area where it's probably impacting your life in some way, that lack of growth or the lack of greenery. And so if you're looking for growth this year, and this is really important, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about for 2022, and that's the idea that we have to have growth in our life. I'd really love to see you develop gardening as a hobby and a way to promote growth in your life. This year, we have the perfect setup for gardening in 2022. So if you have always had a brown thumb, hey, get onto YouTube. You can look up gardening videos, and there's lots of online all kinds of information and articles about how to grow plants and do landscaping. I can't say enough about how important it is to do landscaping around your home, because that beautiful chi that you have around your home comes inside. The same is true if you live indoors. If you have an apartment and you don't have a yard or garden, you can still do some kind of landscaping. Maybe you have a window box on your patio. There are wonderful patio and balcony landscaping, articles and images online that are so lovely, and it will create a little greenscape for you. I want everyone listening to make an effort at creating more green, more growth in their life. But always we want to keep it, so that it's in balance. There's not too much. We don't want to turn your apartment into a greenhouse. That's not a good idea. You need to have just enough plants, and remember, no plants in the bedroom. Now, 2022 coming up is going to be a year when water is important, and obviously the landscaping aspect. I think that we have to look at the water and wood elements, because these are the two elements that keep us alive. Basically, we have to have our outdoors space. We have to have plants. We eat them. The water feeds and nourishes them. We can live without food for a lot longer than we can live without water. Water is important. So think about ways that you can bring water into your home, maybe through an aquarium or through some kind of water feature in your garden. I think that's really important and is a way to tap into the year's energies. Plus, water is also an antidote to COVID. COVID is about metal energy, and water takes a lot of the bite and sting out of that metal energy. And we've had metal energy for the past 2 years. And what we all need right now is a big, long drink of water. Well, there you go. Some FAQs that I am asked very often, and some important tips for 2022. This was a fun podcast for me to do because it was just extemporaneous, and I just got to talk with you and have a little conversation about the year, about some questions that come up frequently, and I hope that it was informative for you. I will be back on with a topic next week, and most likely it's going to be about the Lunar New Year because it's so important for you, and I want to encourage you right now to be preparing for the Lunar New Year. Why? It's a brand new energy coming in. It's a brand new year. This is like the car that just drives right off of the showroom floor. This is the beautiful new energy, and you want your house prepared for it. We want to get rid of all the old stuff we can get rid of, like old dust and dirt and grime, so give it a good thorough cleaning. If you can't declutter every closet, don't stress about it. Just make sure you repair what's broken. You don't want to be walking up to the door and you've got a squeaking hinge and there's a broken pane of glass. Correct anything that's broken. Broken equals broke. Very important concept. Make sure that you repair everything is in working state and clean, and that will take you into the new year of 2022 and the year of the tiger in a very good energetic state. So if you can just do nothing else, just do those two things, and you're going to be in great shape for the year of the tiger. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about the year of the tiger, be sure to go to redlotusletter.com/water tiger. Some of the things that I've been talking about and that I wrote about in last September, October are already coming out and in the news. Like this week, I talked about tsunamis and volcanoes. And sure enough, what did we have this week in Tonga? A volcanic underwater eruption that erupted and created tsunamis. And I'm hoping and praying that all the people in Tonga are safe. So this is an opportunity to learn about the year's energies and what they're going to do. And I talk about your bedroom location and your front door location, and your zodiac sign. So this gives you a peek into the year. If you want to learn more, again, go to redlotusletter.com/water tiger. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you on the next 5-Minute Feng Shui. You know, the year of the tiger is coming, and I can't wait to talk with you about what all is in store. We have a clean sweep, a transformational year of water energy with the water tiger in 2022. That means big change is coming. No longer will we have the stricture and constriction of the metal years that we've just come out of with COVID and the pandemic. We have got a clean sweep of energy coming in next year, and I can't wait to tell you all about it in my 2022 Year of the Tiger Feng Shui forecast and success path. Stay tuned right here for a release date that's coming soon.